So good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Thursday night Anamkara meditation program. And with all my heart and with all my love, I welcome you to our program this evening. I'm so happy that you're able to join us tonight. You know, you bring so much. You bring your commitment to practice. You bring the most important thing, your divine self. And satsang is keeping the company of that. So here we are gathered to be able to celebrate that, experience that, do the practices that let us know that directly and live in that awareness. And of course, to walk it into the world for the benefit of all beings. You know, it's that other piece that we're also committed to, is being able to try to do what we can to relieve the suffering of all beings. And we are so aware of the suffering that is engulfing our globe at this time. So we need the refuge of meditation. We need the refuge of our own infinite divine self. That's what empowers us and buoys us through all these kinds of challenging times. So thank you for coming and bringing, the power of your practices and your divine self to this evening. What we're going to do for just a few minutes is, in order to help clear the mind of the day, the week, whatever it needs to be cleared of, is just come to rest in really the foundation of awareness is simply being and being present. And that's encoded in an ancient mantra, the simple two-syllable mantra, aham, aham. And it's a mantra that goes with the breath. And it's said that actually the breath is speaking this mantra all day, all night, all the time. That the breath comes in with the sound ah and goes out with the sound hum. And the mantra simply means I am. I am. But it's the I am awareness that's free of everything that usually comes after I am in our mind. All the different things we've identified with, the thoughts, the feelings, the roles that we're playing. We drop it all and come home to simply being. I am. Aham. So the breath comes in with hum, as the breath goes out, silently in the mind. just continuing to breathe and begin to develop that awareness. It's really an awareness of I am. The awareness of being free of all the things the mind has become. But that consciousness always remains in its infinite, gracious presence, free of that, even while it illuminates the mind becoming that boundlessness of awareness, that spaciousness of being is the ground of our existence. So any time during the day, any time, we can bring our awareness back to the breath and the simple ah as the breath comes in and the hum as the breath goes out. The bare awareness of I am. And that gives us a steadiness. That's what Buddha talked about in terms of one of the 4 immeasurables of that quality of being awareness is unshakable equanimity. That's what empowers us to walk this light of consciousness that also has the qualities of boundless love, boundless compassion, boundless wisdom, and absolute joy. So that's really what we're coming home to in just that simple mantra of ah and hum, ah and hum, I am. Can inform any time, any place with that presence of awareness. So when we talk about going more and more into that awareness, that's really what we're talking about in terms of practices, what the practices are aimed at. And, we focus here on the Thursday nights, 2 main practices really are the use of mantra for chanting and for going into meditation and the practice of meditation. Teachings is a way to help understand that, but those are the 2 main practices. And one of the ways we can look at when we look at meditation is, there are different models for looking at meditation and different models for looking at how we go from our ordinary experience into this sublime, ineffable, unspeakable boundlessness of awareness. And we can talk about that. Oftentimes we've talked about Kundalini as the power of that awareness, the name that's given in the yogic system for that consciousness that has the power to reveal itself in its fullness, even while sustaining the ability to know our finite nature. And the map of that journey in Kundalini, well, that's something we did a course on it in the spring that the Soul's Journey was all about, a book that I wrote some time ago. And to discuss that symbolic map. And it's a highly symbolic map, and too often gets taken very concretely, and people then get confused and lost in that. But that's one map. There's also a very simple map of being able to look at the shift, and it's the map that's based on just states of consciousness. And that map is really talking about 4 states, 3 of which we're already familiar with: the waking state, the dream state, the deep sleep state. So what meditation adds is that 4th state. And that 4th state is the state of meditation. It's the state of that awareness. It's that state that is a living state and a continuous state. It's not something the mind produces. You don't do meditation as a state. We do practices to get the mind out of the way so that that presence of that state of consciousness can be known directly. But all practices are aimed at the mind and body. That boundlessness, that spaciousness of being, that state of meditation isn't something that's developed, added onto, created, tweaked, tuned, none of it. It's already there in its fullness and its perfection. It is the state of your infinite being. It's the state of the divine self. It's the state of God. It's the state of Buddha. So we can give it different names. Different traditions will give us different views of the same state and color them beautifully in, whatever the language of that culture or that tradition is. The state is one. And just as we can't talk about a waking state as there's a Buddhist waking state and a Christian waking state and a Hindu waking state. No, these are states, right? These are states of consciousness. And in that way, they're culture free. But we have to get to know that. We have to understand that. And that makes it easier. So the ordinary waking mind that we're identified with, that is something that, the ordinary ego mind, that sense of me, that little sense of I, dominates. And it's particularly associated with the physical body, the roles that we play, the things that we do. That's that state. We start to shift out of that state at night, typically, and to go into the dream state and into sleep. Now, interestingly, how do you get to that state? Well, you get there by letting go. If you can't let go of the waking mind and all its concerns, you have insomnia. And because the mind is so identified with the momentum of all the thoughts and the things it's got to do, has done, didn't like, but all that stuff, it has to let it all go. And that's a key to understanding that dynamic that is involved in us and how consciousness shifts states. Shift by letting go. Right? So we let go, and then this relaxation, sleep can overcome us. So when the yogis looked at that, they went, okay, so now it's dominant in dream state. Well, that's what would be called the subtle body. Subtle body is the mind, but the mind not so identified with the physical body. Right? So in dream states, you're not bound by the laws of physics. You can fly, you can go back in time, forward in time, you can create whole realities, they disappear. We're not bound by the same rules that identification with the body in the waking state binds us to. So there's all this movement. Well, those similar kinds of things can happen in meditation, where visions unfold and whole other experiences that are more subtle body oriented and less physical body grounded. But we have to understand there are differences in state. You can't come out of the dream state and say, I think I'll jump off that building and try and fly. We know that. So we have to know that there are things that go with one state and maybe not with another. Now, for the body and the brain and the mind to be able to shift from the dream state into deep sleep, there's another kind of letting go. We're not usually conscious enough to understand or experience that directly. But there's a further letting go into deep sleep. Now there's just the bare thread of a component of that little I awareness that stays present. So we can wake up in the morning and think, oh, I had such a deep sleep. There was just the seed awareness of I-ness present. We didn't die and disappear. I had a deep. Who was the one that was there reporting that we had a deep sleep? Just this little bit of awareness and a greater awareness. It's that greater awareness that we're really interested in terms of meditation. Because just the other side of deep sleep is the meditative state. Now, when we look at the three ordinary states that we inhabit, and that's all that most people ever inhabit. They all live in the tri-state area, and that's as far as they go. The waking, dream, and deep sleep states. They're discontinuous. You're either in one or the other. Meditation transcends and subsumes. It incorporates all. Right? So it's different in that way, that it transcends and subsumes, and it's continuous. These other states are discontinuous. You leave one state, you go to the other. Meditation is enveloping all of them. That's why it said it already exists. For us to come to know that state, it's even deeper levels of letting go, of being identified with thoughts as they arise, feelings as they arise, emotions as they arise, memories as they arise. There's always a constant arising flux in the space of the consciousness of mind, after which that little I maker, what the yogis call ahamkar, just a little I maker, attaches itself. I am this thought, I am that feeling, I'm in relationship with this person, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a this, I'm a that. All those things, swaha, let him go, let him go, let him go. That's what the practices keep inviting us to do. Both let that go and discover the spaciousness of being, so that when we're just simply breathing and doing the ah as the breath comes in and the hum as the breath goes out, we're doing that and a thought arises. We let go of that, we come back to the ah and the hum. And it begins over time to lead us deeper and deeper into letting go and staying aware. Because we're used to, when you're falling asleep, you're letting go, but you're letting go of consciousness itself. So we don't even necessarily remember dreams or go into that consciously. You don't necessarily remember or really have a conscious experience of the deep sleep state. So we want to hold this little, there's just this little thread of the luminous quality of awareness. It's not limited eye awareness. It's not an identification. It's simply like, oh, there's a light on in here. We start to notice that. Because what the yogis thousands of years ago, as they explored this inner domain, saw that, in meditation, you can be awake meditatively in the dream state, in the deep sleep state, and the waking state. So, it subsumes all of them. That meditative consciousness, that expansiveness of being, that boundlessness of nature, of consciousness, is always present. What happens is we drop it as soon as we become identified with a thing, a thought, a feeling, a role, or this or that. So identification is the dynamic that limits consciousness, allows us to get really involved in this world of differences, but it binds us to it. So we're constantly in a meditative practice, letting go, letting go, letting go, to come back to knowing the fullness of the ground of our being that never left. It was never anywhere else. God never left. The divine never left. It's always here. It's always present. There's no place for it to go. It is you. It is me. It is all that is. So we come to rest in that knowing by letting go and letting go and letting go. By understanding meditation in the model of the four states of consciousness, it also helps the ordinary mind, the ego mind, to understand how limited its role is. It's not there to produce meditation. It's not there to summon God. It's not there to open the doors of consciousness. It's just there to become more and more quiet, more and more still, more and more humble in the presence of that sublime, infinite light that's here now. That's what we're called to know. And the mind, over time, becomes the servant of that and lives in relationship to that. So that then it can be a carrier of a little ladle of that consciousness into the world, a little ladle of that love, that compassion, that grace. But the source, the infinitude, that's not that mind. The mind is a servant of the one, an emanation of the one. That's what it is. That's what your ordinary self is. Your true self is the one. And that's what all the practices across all the mystical traditions point to. There's this unity in that across traditions. And so we want to have an appreciation that different paths have different colors and, different flowers along their pathways. But they're all going to the same place, the one, the source. Call it what you will. And a way of invoking that is mantra. So mantra is a refuge. So mantra means that which protects. When we take refuge, when we become absorbed in mantra, when we identify with, I am the mantra, I am the source of the mantra, I am the sound of the mantra, I am the throb of the mantra, all that is the mantra. That then fills the spaciousness of our awareness. So whatever mantra we're doing, that is the foundational component of the practice is, let me shift from identification with mind, thought, feelings, all the stuff. Let me shift to the identification with mantra, a throb of the infinite that isn't mind-born, a throb of the infinite that arises from the infinite and returns us to the infinite. That's what mantra does. So we're going to be chanting mantras, and there are mantras from all the different great traditions. So this is a chant that I call the chant of the world mantras, and it's in this, let me get the light off of that, it's in this CD that we put out a few years back, available online. But of course we'll have it here, and then it'll be in the recording as well. But in case you want the audio recording, that's downloadable. I think it's still on Amazon and other places. So, but this is a chant that really embodies the world mantras from the different traditions. And so it starts with Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. The Maha Mantra from the Hindu yoga tradition means Om is an invocation of the infinite, beyond form, meaning, anything. Namah Shivaya, I bow to the auspicious one, the divine within everything, as everything. Om Namah Shivaya. Then it goes into Om Kali Durga Ma, Om Kali Durga Ma. And so that's an invocation of the Great Mother, the sort of the feminine face of the infinite that gives birth to all, sustains all, holds all in her divine embrace. Om Kali Ma, Om Kali Ma, a facet of your own divine self. Then from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, means hail to the jewel in the lotus. The jewel is your Buddha nature in the lotus of the body and the mind. It's an invocation of that awareness. Then another mantra from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Om Taritam Soha, Om Taritam Soha. It's an invocation of Tara, another name for the Great Mother, the Divine Mother, who leaps forward to relieve the suffering of all beings. She too is a facet of you, right? That compassion that arises when we see the suffering in the world, and we want to do anything we can to relieve that suffering. That's your Tara nature expressing itself. We don't even have to call it Tara. It's just that. But that's what the mantra is pointing to. Om Taritam Soha, Om Taritam Soha. And then from the Islamic tradition, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. There is no other deity. There is no other God but God, right? It's a proclamation. It's an invocation. There's just God. There is no other God but God, right? And we hear that also mirrored in the ancient Jewish mantra, Ein Od Milvado, Ein Od Milvado. There is nothing else but God. There is no other than God. There is nothing but God. That's that proclamation. Right? The same awareness. You can see that's all there is. That's all there is. And then in the Christian tradition, we have a couple of the mantras from there. Kyrie eleison. It's Lord have mercy. It's the invocation of the infinite, boundless, compassionate divine to have mercy on all beings. Yeah, a similar way that when we're invoking Buddha or Tara or the Great Mother, we're often invoking that compassionate, boundless, loving presence. Kyrie eleison. Right? And then Sancta Maria, Mater Dei. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei. Right? Oh, Holy Mother Mary. Mother of God. And we're invoking her. The great mother that gives birth to all divine beings. In the same way, in the Buddhist tradition, it's Tara who gives birth to all Buddhists. It's Ma Kali who gives birth to all forms of all gods. Shiva would have no form if it weren't for the Great Mother. So the Great Mother, the giver of form to everything, including the formless Godhead, the transcendent one, that we may have some way of knowing and relating and connecting to that. So we'll be chanting this mantra through a few times, and then at the end, we'll just sit in the silence, in the stillness, in meditation. If the mind moves, you can bring it back to the simple awareness of the ah and the hum, or you can use one of the mantras, but always with that awareness of I am, that infinite, that boundless one. Let go of this identity as it comes up, this thought, this feeling. Come back to the ground of being, pure, unbounded consciousness, awareness, bliss. So, we'll begin. Shri Mata Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Kali Durga Ma. Om Kali Durga Ma. Om Kali Durga Ma. Om Kali Durga Ma. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Taritam Soha. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Einod milvando. Einod milvando. Einod milvando. Einod milvando. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Sancta Maria. Sancta Maria. Mater Dei. Mater Dei. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Kali Durga Ma. Om Kali Durga Ma. Om Kali Durge Ma. Om Kali Durge Ma. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Taritam Soha. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Einod milvado. Einod milvado. Einod milvado. Einod milvado. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Sancta Maria, Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, Mater Dei. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Om Kali Durge Ma. Om Kali Durge Ma. Om Kali Durge Ma. Om Kali Durge Ma. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Ham Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Taritam Soha. Om Taritam Taritam Soha. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Einod milvado. Einod milvado. Einod milvado. Einod milvado. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Sancta Maria, Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, Mater Dei. Om Kali Durge Ma, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Taritam Soha, Om Taritam Soha, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, Ainod milvado, Ainod milvado, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Santa Maria, Santa Maria, Mater Dei, Mater Dei. And letting go and letting go, breath by breath, letting go of all that seems in the way of being with and knowing fully the One, the Source, your very self. Rest in that. And we'll close the chant to Ma Kali. Om Kali Ma. Kali Namo Namah. Om Kali Ma. Kali Namo Namah. Kali Mahadevi ki jai. We end with this prayer that may all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. The state of meditation continues. We can start to see more and more clearly how when the mind gets going, identification with its content springs up right along with it. That is the mind. That is its nature. So we can see that, and as we see that, we can detach and see, oh, there's the mind, there's thoughts, there's things going by, and it's all happening in this luminous spaciousness of awareness. That's what gives us freedom from the mind and its compulsive patterns, compulsive reactions, compulsive behaviors. We step back and step back, let go and let go. Come home to the truth of who you are, and then walk that into the world. Because that's where the freedom comes, to be loving, caring, compassionate in the face of anything. We can see the world, people so identified with such limited sense of self, and then fighting over power, possession, destroying the planet, destroying each other. Freedom lies beyond that mind that creates that drama. And so everybody has the capacity for knowing that. So a lot of it is we want to help people remember by reminding ourselves, by living in that remembrance of the truth of who we are. So thank you for coming this evening and being ones who do these practices, who remember and walk the wisdom, the knowledge, the love, the presence into the world at a time when it's so desperately needed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming and bringing the power of your practices and the power of your divine self to this evening and to the Sangha. And then I look forward to seeing you again at our next satsang. So, and once again, with all my heart, with all my love, thank you all for coming this evening.